Good morning, everyone. The reading for this morning is from Rumi, the 13th century Sufi poet. It's called The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight, the dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from the beyond. Say, I am you. When I was a parish minister a long time ago, one of my favorite Sundays of the church year was the Sunday before Halloween. Children and some adults dressed up in costumes. We had a March of the Goblins. We sang pumpkin carols. We told ghost stories. And so many of life's themes fit more naturally here than anywhere else in the church year. Themes that might easily get neglected. Festivals and rituals at this time of the year have an ancient origin rooted in the rhythms of nature. The leaves are falling and we are entering into the darkness of winter. It stands directly opposite May Day, the 1st of May, when the leaves begin to bud out on the trees. In my own life, there is a flurry of outside activity before cold weather sets in, the ground freezes, and snow begins to fly. Some people believe that at this time of the year, the spaces between the worlds are at its thinnest point. This is the time of the year when opposites come into play. Halloween, which literally means the eve of the hallowed day, is followed by All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day. In Europe on these days, people go to the graves of the loved ones who have died. And for centuries, they brought not only prayers and recollections, but also little gifts. And there's a secret psychological aspect to this. Often, when a person we love dies, we carry feelings of guilt and regret. In Christianity, they are called the sins of omission and the sins of commission. The good things that we do not and did not do, and the negative aspects we wish that we had done. This can be associated with the idea of the dead tricking or hurting those who hurt them. There is a fear of the dead that is an old feeling based on this regret. Black has been the color of mourning because in ancient times, people believed that the spirits of the dead could enter the bodies of the living. To keep from being possessed, mourners would disguise themselves by painting their bodies black or covering themselves with black garments. The custom of women wearing black veils or men and women wearing black armbands, which you frequently see if you have traveled in Europe, was an extension of this precaution. In Catholic Europe, people went to the graves, but in the Celtic world, from which Halloween comes, it is the dead who come to visit the homes where they used to live. Halloween is the night of the re-entry of the dead into their homes where they used to live, visiting again the people with whom they had shared their lives. The idea of giving a gift or suffering a trick is associated with this feeling of guilt and regret. There's another aspect that belongs to this return of the dead. In cultures where belief in reincarnation is prevalent, they see their children as returning ancestors. The ancestral genes appear in our children. So when a child is born in these cultures, the first thing they do is to go and look into the face of the child to see who it is who's returned. Then there is the whole aspect of wearing masks and costumes. Often they evoke something deep in us. All of us take on different roles in our life. Rich man, poor man, beggar man, thief, doctor, lawyer, Indian chief. And some people so identify with a role that they think they are actually the role that they are playing. Carl Jung, the psychiatrist, called these roles persona. Persona is the mask worn by an actor. It's where we get the word person from. We are a species that wear masks in order to keep people from knowing who we really are because we are afraid of that. Jung says we love our vitality in playing the role if we identify with it. We should play the role and realize that we are transcendent of the role. Moral and customary habits are included in these roles. Joseph Campbell, the mythologist, tells the story of pulling into a parking space in New York City where he lived, and parking spaces were very difficult to find. There was a small boy standing on the sidewalk in a rigid sort of catatonic state. As Campbell opened the door of his car to get out, the child said in a very strong voice, "You can't park here." And Campbell said he looked around and there weren't any warning signs. "Well, why not?" he asked the boy. "Because I'm a fire hydrant," the little boy said. And Campbell said he drove off because he didn't want to destroy that little boy's meditation. Mahababa, an Indian master of Sufism, taught that the only prerequisite for waking up was total disillusionment about yourself. Why? Because the whole notion that you are a fixed entity is a great illusion. And the sooner you see how varied and complex you are, the sooner you will drop the mask of your ego. Antonio Machado, a Spanish poet, wrote a little poem in which he says, "I love Jesus, who said, 'Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will remain.' What were your words, Jesus? Love, forgiveness, humility? No, all your words were one word: wake up," which is the essential meaning of the word Buddha. It means the person who has woken up. The subject this morning of which I have spoke throughout my ministry several times because it seems like such an important understanding of the nature of who we are, is God as trickster. The trickster is a mythological figure. He doesn't belong to history. The trickster corresponds to inner psychic experience, the play of inner energy. The figure originates inside ourselves from inner experiences. Campbell calls them themes of the imagination. The trickster can be found in myths and stories all over the world. Sometimes it's a human figure, sometimes it's an animal figure, sometimes it's a divine figure, such as coyote or rabbit or raven or spider in American and African folk tales. There's a little story about Etsu, the Ethiopian trickster god, who walks through the field with a hat that's red on one side and blue on the other. At noontime, he turns around to walk back home, but he turns his hat around. So the farmers on one side only see a blue-sided hat, and the farmers on the other side only see a red-sided hat. So when they get together at the end of the day, they begin to talk about God walking through the fields. Wasn't it wonderful that God walked through the field with his red hat? And the other side said, no, he had a blue hat. And there's tremendous disagreement about the color of the hat until Etsu suddenly appears and he's laughing uproariously and thinks, this is my greatest joy, creating strife. In 1961, the great psychiatrist Carl Jung gave an interview, which of all surprises was done in good housekeeping, in which he gave a definition of God as if he were a trickster, a power working against our conscious will. To this day, he said, God is the name by which I designate all things which cross my willful path violently and recklessly, all things which upset my subjective views, plans, and intentions, and change the course of my life for better or worse. The old saying, if you want to see God laugh, tell him your plans. In the story of the Wizard of Oz, the citizens of the land of Oz believe that the wizard holds everything together. So Dorothy and her friends, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Cowardly Lion, make a pilgrimage on the yellow brick road to see the wizard. But they get tricked. The great and venerable wizard, powerful and terrible, turns out to be a carnival huckster, a smoke and mirrors, bells and whistles creation. Their God tricked them. But here's the magic, the trick worked. It was because of their belief in the wizard that the Tin Man found his heart, the Scarecrow his intelligence, the Cowardly Lion his courage, and Dorothy found her way home. And the wizard himself became changed by the encounter. Santa Claus is a divine figure. He knows the name of every child. He knows where they live. And if they go to grandmother's house, he knows that that's where they've gone. He knows what they want. He knows their heart's desire. And he has a delivery system. I suspect that all of us carry some degree of regret about having been tricked when we found out who was really behind the mask. And then we grow up to become Santa Claus. And the play continues, and we play the same trick. And old images of the divine give way to new images. The trickster in mythology plays off the orderly, the civilized, the polite, the correct, the moral, the sacred, the solemn. The trickster is a taboo breaker, pot stirrer, a delight maker, an energy bringer, a gate opener, a change agent. Have you ever been somewhere where there was so much solemnity in the occurring thing where you were that you had this desire to sort of pull the rug out from underneath somebody or pull the tablecloth off the dining room table? The trickster is the spirit of disorder that is opposite the necessary pole of order. In living our lives as individuals, we hold to certain forms, certain ways of being in the world, which is necessary, or we don't have any life. It would just be chaos. Our friends, people who know us, would all have a pretty similar view about our style. But we ought not to imagine that the form we created is all there is. The form we have made of our lives stands in relationship to what we have not actualized. Our energy system is like a teeter-totter. The more you move toward one end of the teeter-totter, the greater the imbalance. The trickster is a figure who helps us stay in touch with the other side. If you don't recognize the other side and honor the trickster, he may turn out to be the devil. The playful element of the trickster gets lost. Joseph Campbell defined the devil as an unrecognized God. The energy we don't recognize as belonging to us gets split off the pieces of ourselves that we do not like. Often, what we deny takes the form of a devil. And the devil plays an enormously big part in the Christian tradition because it has tended to emphasize and strive for purity, light, and perfection. A long time ago, the evangelist Jimmy Swaggart would pound the pulpit on Sunday morning about righteousness and purity. And then on Monday morning, he would be in the steamy parts of the city paying prostitutes to talk dirty to him. Well, it's perfectly understandable. And what did he say? He said the devil made him do it. Life is a form of energy between these two poles. Whatever position you hold in life, it creates and invites its opposite. The third Zen patriarch of Buddhism said, "The great way is not difficult for all those who cease from cherishing opinions." And Niels Bohr, the Danish physicist, said, "Nothing is true unless its opposite is also true." Life is entirely accidental, random, and arbitrary. What do you think? What do you believe? "O world, I cannot get thee close enough," wrote Edna St. Vincent Millay. And Peggy Lee saying, "Is this all there is?" There is a Jewish proverb that I have sometimes used at memorial and funeral services. It's called the parable of two pockets. A person has two pockets in which to reach. In one pocket the words are contained in a little message. For me, the world was made. I am the center of it all. And then you reach into the other pocket and it says you are dust, and to dust you shall return. And those two poles have to be held in some form of balance. The Taoists say, leave no trace. The American motto is, make it happen, make your mark. Lewis Hyde, in his book, The Trickster Makes the World, says that cultures require that there be space for figures whose function is to uncover and disrupt the very things that a culture is based on. Life is a flow of energy between these two poles, which are always in tension with each other. Yin and yang, light and darkness, birth and death. The well-known death from Ecclesiastes, for everything there is a season, a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die. E.B. White's famous line about every day I am confronted with a dilemma: to savor the world or to save the world. The more you move in one direction, the more tension is created. We have to find a way to honor the other side, the unseen, unlived portion of our lives. The trickster is a figure who keeps us in touch with the other side. The more tenaciously we hold to a given form, the more the resistance. The more you try to get your children to behave in a particular way, what happens? A certain kind of resistance is created. This is not an argument for lack of standards. It is an awareness for honoring the resistance. William Blake, in his little book, The Marriage of Heaven and Earth, says you go to heaven to get order, and you go to hell in order to get the energy, and you have to marry the two. When a person strives for sweetness and purity, there is always a countervailing shadow. The more the energy of one pole is ignored or denied, the more threatening, compulsive, and controlled the other pole becomes. Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was a perfect example. In the book of Job, God and Satan are still able to carry on a conversation, a time when the light and the dark sides are still in dialogue. And Satan is the one who asks the hard, awkward, inconvenient, untimely questions. Here, Satan is still a part of the court of God and functions as the inquisitor of God to keep God on his toes, like the court jester did in the presence of the king. Robert Bly, the poet, in his book entitled A Little Book of the Human Shadow, he visualizes the shadow as a long bag we drag behind us and into which we are continually stuffing different parts of ourselves that we don't like. We come into the world, as Wordsworth said, trailing clouds of glory from the furthest reaches of the cosmos and from our life in trees, appetites from our mammalian past and our tribal life. When we arrive, we have 360 degrees of possibility. We are fully radiant and alive. But very soon we realize that there are parts of our personality that our parents do not like. So in order to keep our parents' love, we toss these impulses and emotions into an invisible bag behind us, is what Robert Bly is saying. By the time we are ready for adulthood, you may have a thin slice of the 360 degrees left. In a poem, Bly writes, I cannot remember years of my childhood. Some parts of me I cannot find now. I intended that. I threw some parts of me away at 10, others at 20, a lot at 28. I wanted to thin myself as a wire is thinned. Is there enough left of me to be honest? The primary mission of the trickster god is to spread doubt about everything. Beliefs, motives, institutions, laws, leaders, ourselves. And they share the uncanny ability of escaping the trouble they get into. And just when all seems lost, they rise again, like the resurrection of Jesus. We don't carry a whole lot of imagination of Jesus as a trickster god, but he was constantly poking fun at the pomposity of the self-righteousness of the most religious people of his day. He hung out, from what we can gather from the scriptures, with the outcasts. Imagine him saying to the priests, the harlots are going to get into heaven before you do. We have heard it said, but I say, let the dead bury the dead. The first shall be last. In order to find your life, you have to lose it. Everything we know, everything we believe, everything we are is destined to evolve or dissolve into something else. The trickster invites us not to take ourselves too seriously, to let go of our impossible cravings for certainty and significance, letting go of our demands for perfect happiness. All of life, we play roles. The trickster pricks our pomposity. He undoes our fine plans. The trickster says, you're not so good, you're not so smart, you're not so great, you're not indispensable. Death will come, the great play will go on, lighten up. Quit tinkering with yourself. Quit trying to fix yourself up. Loosen up. It's a dance, it's a play, and you're an actor. Take your part. Learn to love all aspects of your life. This wondrous gift that has been brought to life within you. From witches and warlocks and ghoulies and ghosties and long-legged beasties and things that go bump in the night, good Lord, help us to learn how to befriend them. Amen.